Now, people will have seen previous segments that I've done on council budgets because it's something that I'm really passionate about, on having thriving local communities with provision of your council services being done in a efficient and well-funded manner. And this has been completely dismantled and taken apart by the Conservative government from 2010 till now, specifically between 2010 and 2016 under the austerity government of George Osborne, when council budgets were cut by 40%, where money was taken out of certain areas and put into other areas which didn't need the money, to, say, deprived urban areas to Royal Tunbridge Wells. And Rishi Sunak doesn't know anything about that. But there have been plenty of council cuts. Councils have been going bankrupt because of this. Councils have been encouraged to take on huge fiscal burdens in debt and to be entrepreneurial with all of this extra new devolution and independence that they've got. Really and truly, it's just an excuse to cut their budgets back. And given the fact that central government has failed in other areas, other huge areas of fiscal policy, like ensuring that we have proper levels of housing in this country, which means that homeless provision is eating into more of council budgets because they have to provide these things. They have to provide adult social care. And despite increases in council tax, the central government funding has massively dropped. And because they're spending so much more on these things that they're obliged to offer these services for, and any investments they make are subject to levels of risk, councils are going bankrupt left, right and centre. We had Nottingham and Birmingham and Thurrock all very recently based upon lawsuits, failed investments, lack of funding in general, and downright corruption, really and truly, when you look at Thurrock. And what that has left us with is £15 billion, I've mentioned this figure before, of assets have been sold by councils over the last 14 years to make up budget shortfalls to be able to actually meet their day-to-day spending, given those deliberate cuts by the Conservative government to meet their obligations, which obviously isn't going to work. You can't run out of assets, or you can run out of assets rather, sorry, whereas you will always have to provide those continual payments for these obligatory council functions that they have to do, like adult social care and like homelessness provision. So what's essentially going to happen is these cuts are going to leave us with no assets left apart from things that are already ring-fenced in terms of what assets they're not allowed to sell off. Which is why it's good that in some areas things are put into community trust rather than owned by local authorities, meaning they are safe. Given what's been going on with council budgets, meaning that we have seen all of these recent bankruptcies, these Section 114 notices, this is being going even further. So all of those local assets, again, let me point out, this is stuff that you own. You collectively own these within your local authority, chat, and viewers watching this segment that I put up later on YouTube. These are things that you own, and the Conservative government is forcing councils to be put into the position where they have to sell it because of the rules that govern local authorities and the services that they have to provide. It's being done deliberately. It's being done deliberately, and that means that your libraries, your swimming pools, your parks, your local areas, your youth centres, your community centres are now being taken over by private capital and private equity. No longer will it be your local park. It'll be your local park brought to you by Alliance and KKR, foreign private investment capital firms who want to make money off of the assets that you used to own, but the Tories wanted to get sold off. And this ramping up includes changing the rules on what can and can't get sold. So Bloomberg have been reporting on this, that the UK may ease the rule on council asset sales to curb bankruptcies. Ministers are quietly consulting on more flexible rules, concerns the councils could sell off the family silver. Now, what that's a reference to is a statement by Harold Macmillan, who one might say, oh, not wanting to have fiscal prudence from our councils, he sounds like a pinko, commie leftoid. Well, no, that was Conservative ex-Prime Minister Harold Macmillan describing privatisation as like selling off the family silver, and he is not wrong. But again, he's too left-wing for Starmer's Labour Party now, so heaven knows that Harold Macmillan would not be welcome in today's politics, but he is not wrong, and I agree with him, that it would be like selling off the family silver, but that means nothing in neoliberal Britain. There is no such thing as something that is too precious that it can't have value stapled onto it to get sold off and put in the hand of crony businessmen, of the neoliberal ghouls who run our country. Nothing is too precious that it cannot be sold off for profit and put into the hands of private equity. And this was always the plan, chat. This was always the plan, to cut the budgets and pretend it was being done in the name of autonomy. It was deliberately being done so that they were forced into the position where they would have to sell these things off, because the Conservatives don't believe in community ownership. They don't believe in community. They only believe in private capital. They only believe in their mates in the private sector. That's all they believe in. And for all of that talk about the death of community, all that talk about the end of localism, all that talk about what's happening in a local level from people who genuinely actual belief in conservatism. Do conservatives conserve anything anymore? Of course they don't. Capitalism and neoliberalism is, quite frankly, the antithesis of traditional conservatism, but they don't see it. They don't, and they cannot see this stuff. It's why Harold Macmillan is far more of a real conservative than any of the current conservatives are. They're just kleptocrats. They're kleptocrats and they're corrupt, and that's all that matters to these people. And on the current fiscal rules, apparently Labour are no better because they've not said that they're going to increase council budgets. So we're going to end up in the same position. Are they going to change the rules back? We don't know, but they've not said anything, so I won't skewer them too much on this. But this is the world that we're going to live in, where anything that's theoretically precious that you own, that your local community has as an asset that you all own, gone into the hands of some unscrupulous businessman who doesn't care about your community, doesn't care about your local area, only cares about how much money that they can make off of you, off of your local area, off of your prized local community hotspots that should be collectively owned by your local authority, but no longer, because we need to ensure that everything is privatized, where we know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. It's such an absolute travesty that this stuff happens, an absolute travesty that this is allowed to happen. And again, as Elron points out in chat, pre-Thatcher Tories are the left of the current Labour Party. Harold Macmillan would not be welcome in today's politics for saying things like selling off the family silver. So let's read on. So UK government ministers are quietly working on major loosening of budget rules for local councils, giving the ability to sell off assets to fund frontline services and helping stave off a wave of bankruptcies. The measures, if adopted, could unlock £23 billion. So in 14 years, we've sold off 15 billion, which is already a gigantic, egregious level of sell-off of public and locally owned assets. And that is 23 billion immediately. More than 14 years of asset sales combined would happen immediately because of deliberate budget shortfalls and deliberate removal of budgets of Westminster funding from the Conservative government, from George Osborne to Jeremy Hunt. It's absolutely sickening. And it was always the long con, the long game that they were playing to ensure that we could locally own nothing at all anymore, all in the hands of their mates. The proposals were released in a call for views document, pushed out alongside a boost for local government funding announced late last year by Michael Gove, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up Housing Communities. This really says levelling up to me, doesn't it, chat? Do you feel levelled up? Knowing that private equity will own your local swimming pool, does that feel like levelling up to you? Levelling up the amount to which corporations have control over your lives and local communities are completely unempowered? Again, the opposite of what was being promised by Boris Johnson. The opposite of the manifesto that was being sent out and extolled the virtues of by the Conservative Party in 2019. That's in the dust, isn't it? That's been trampled into the dirt, hasn't it? Thank you, Rishi. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Michael. Really great work, right? One election you decided to give voters even something of what they wanted, and they're not even allowed that. Real sounds levelled up to me, doesn't it? They weren't mentioned in Gove's statement to Parliament or in the main documents accompanying the funding decision. The move would mark a sharp relaxation of the current constraints, which prevent councils from using money from asset sales to meet budget pressures from day-to-day service without approval from the central government. Of course, they will always approve it. They will always approve anything that makes money for their friends in the private sector, and they have done over the last 14 years. It suggests Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's administration is moving to contain financial turmoil that's already engulfed major authorities including Birmingham, Woking and Nottingham. Interesting that they don't include the Conservative Thorough Council there as well, but whatever it is. As you see, these are a lot of debts that have been taken on to make up budget shortfalls with this extra quote-unquote autonomy that they've been given from central government. While the measures may prevent a wave of bankruptcies in the coming years, they wouldn't address underlying problems that have left many councils on the brink of collapse. Critics blame more than a decade of underfunding under the Conservative government for squeezing council budgets. Plenty of money for quantitative easing for the financial sector, though. Plenty of money to push up asset prices for their mates in the city. Plenty of money to prop up the stock market. No money for local authorities. No money for your local Sure Start centres. No money for your community centres. No money for your libraries. No money for your swimming pools. But there's plenty of money to bomb Syria. Plenty of money to go to war in Libya. Plenty of money to be given to the financial sector under the Conservative government. Plenty of money whilst thousands were losing their lives to austerity. These are the worst human beings alive. I just cannot stand these people at all. And of course, they have indeed cut budgets by up to 40% over that period. It may tempt some authorities to sell the family silver without any long-term plan for funding, said Jack Shaw, an affiliate researcher at the Bennett Institute for Public Policy at the University of Cambridge. He said that it may reduce the number of Section 114 notices, which is when councils effectively declare bankruptcy, but at a potential cost further down the line. Because, of course, neoliberalism always is a total false economy, a continual false economy where you pay no money now to pay more money later and lose all of your assets at the same time. Because, of course, when they get under Section 114 notices, central government can take control of the councils under special measures. I wonder, chat, I wonder if the government will not sell off family silver when they get to have dictatorial control over local authorities when they go into bankruptcy. I wonder whether they might renege on that plan to sell off assets. I don't think they will, chat. I don't think they will. I think they'll go ahead with it, given what they've done so far and their desire to unlock potential new asset sell-offs by changing the rules as well. The government documents proposed more flexibility in allowing councils to sell assets to ease the pressure on budgets, reduce borrowing or add to reserves, noting that the sector has £23 billion of properties that could be tapped, such as shopping centres and office blocks. Local authorities that use any new flexibilities provided by the government to put in place plans to reduce costs to improve efficiency in ways that reduce the future risk. But of course, as we all know, these efficiency savings don't exist. We are already cut to the bone. They're already making plenty of savings, and this is not cuttable anymore, which is why the bankruptcies have happened already in multiple constituencies, and while multiple constituencies are on the brink of issuing Section 114 notices, because they've already cut everything down as far as they can, running threadbare operations on only the things that they have an obligation to provide, rather than what they could theoretically be doing outside of that. The call for views also hinted at a cut in interest rates for councils to borrow or invest to save projects that make the running of local authorities more efficient, saying that their government is uninterested in understanding whether this would help. Officials are moving to address shortfalls that are tipping more authorities into financial trouble. Councils that have issued Section 114 notices that effectively declare bankruptcy start a process where they're forced to slash spending on services to plug holes in their finances. As we see, most funding does indeed come from government grants for your council funding, and that's where their shortfalls have come from, this big cut in government grants during the austerity period of 2010-2015. Sounds like we're selling this country piecemeal. We are indeed, Rohack. Selling England by the pound, as Genesis would say. Proposals are remarkable and a short-term fix, which from the government's point of view gets them through the general election, said Tony Travers, a professor at the London School of Economics. It's not about getting through the election, though. It's not about getting them through to the election. It's about profiting their friends in the private sector. It's about an ideological goal of removing collective ownership, an ideological goal of making sure that everything is financialized, everything is privately owned, nothing is ever done collectively anymore. Again, the price of everything and the value of nothing. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.